We need to talk about Ellie's immunity and how it's definitely the most underutilized aspect of the plot going into The Last of Us Part 2. Because one thing I definitely expected for the sequel of the game prior to it coming out was a plot that surrounded the world finding out about Ellie being immune to the fire. But we definitely don't really get to see anything happen in reference to Ellie's immunity or the fact that her cordyceps fungus is mutated in a way. Outside of the scene where Dina ends up finding out that Ellie's immune, as well as Nora during the time where Ellie uses her immunity as a weapon and pushes both her and Nora into a spore-filled environment. And while I think they definitely didn't miss the mark in terms of Ellie using her immunity as a weapon, I definitely feel like there was much more they could have done in terms of using her immunity for the plot. Because when you think about it, the first Last of Us game is literally entirely about Ellie being immune. I mean, the whole journey that Joel and Ellie go on is based around her getting to the Fireflies so they can use her immunity. And we even see that there is notes of a girl who is immune to the fungus, so it means that there are other people in the Fireflies and in the Last of Us universe who are aware of Ellie's ability. I don't know if that would make her very sought out in terms of her being considered a threat, but it's definitely something that we should have seen incorporated more into the plot of the second. And what way better to do that than the existence of the religious cult, the Seraphites. Now I know that there's a lot that's said about the Seraphites and what they are meant to represent in terms of The Last of Us and the symbolism they have for real life. But one thing I definitely think is interesting about the Seraphites is the fact that they view all of the infected as a disease that is sent by God in response to the sins committed by the people of humanity. And while that is definitely a very interesting concept that can be delved into on its own, take a minute to think about what we could have received if we got a story that revolved around the Seraphites somehow finding out that Ellie's immune. Because if I remember correctly, the Seraphite prophet passed away before the events of the game, which means that the religious group is essentially looking for a new leader and are at the weakest point in their history. So about the time that they run into Ellie, there literally could have been a scene where we see Ellie get captured by them the same way we saw Abby, and they could even try to get her to be fed to one of the infected, solely to find out that Ellie is immune somehow. But what would the Seraphites do with this information? In all honesty, I could definitely see the Seraphites praising Ellie as their new prophet and saying that she was sent by God in response to finding out that she is immune to the infection that they consider to be the wrath of God. Because in the mind of the Seraphites, Ellie herself would be immune to the wrath of God. So this could lead to Ellie being essentially worshipped as a Jesus-like prophetic figure within the Seraphites community. And I'm not sure how Ellie herself would react to that, but I do know for certain that she would try to use this to her advantage, especially during the events of The Last of Us Part 2 when she is solely focused on revenge and making sure that Abby pays for what she did to Joel. So I could see Ellie manipulating the Seraphite community into attacking the WLF in specific ways that would help her complete her goal of killing off Abby, as well as using the Seraphites in order to acquire more resources for her arsenal in order for her to do so. Or I could see Ellie being completely disillusioned with the existence of the Seraphites in the first place. She does call them crazy, so it obviously stands to say that she doesn't agree with their morals or their values. However, making them find out about her immunity, I feel would definitely do wonders for the plot of The Last of Us Part 2, and it would definitely make everything in the plot flow together a little more seamlessly, especially because the Seraphite prophet was a woman, which means that they view women in some sense as prophetic figures or divine figures in their lives. So Ellie just coming in and being the one that is immune to the disease that they consider to be God's wrath is definitely narrative setup for Ellie to become the new prophet or the new leader of the Seraphite community. It would have even been cool to see Ellie try to liberate the people from the Seraphites and try to open their mind from the religion that was created due to the events of the apocalypse, solely by exposing the fact that she is immune to the zombie virus. I could also see news of this somehow getting back to the WLF and them being able to find out that Ellie is the same immune girl that the Fireflies had access to back in the day when Joel whacked the rest, which means that we could see Ellie become the #1 most sought out and wanted person living in the Last of Us universe, and essentially see her become wanted for her immunity by multiple different groups that are trying to utilize her immunity to the fungus as a weapon. This would lead to groups like the WLF and the Seraphites and Fedra, as well as the Fireflies that still exist, all coming to war with one another in order to obtain and kidnap Ellie, which in my personal opinion could also make a really wonderful third The Last of Us game, with everyone just simply finding out about Ellie's immunity, especially because that was such a point in the first game for no one to be made aware of. But if the Seraphites did find out that Ellie was immune and thus stopped being hostile towards her, I definitely believe that Ellie would use that as an opportunity to liberate all of the children from the Seraphites community and free them from the island before the war got too crazy, as well as try to convert everybody from the religion, since we all know that Ellie is not that religious herself based upon what she says in both the first and second game. But it would definitely do wonder for the plot and narrative of the story for them to utilize Ellie's immunity more and to make other characters aware of it, so it becomes more of a sought out commodity in the universe. I've also had the idea that Ellie could use her immunity as a weapon in the sense of her somehow developing abilities from the cordyceps fungus that's growing on her brain that allows her to emulate emulate the same abilities of the infected, such as the echolocation of clickers and the superhuman strength that is exhibited by bloaters and some runners, or maybe even see Ellie take on the form of a humanoid stalker in some, or introduce a villain character that has an immunity that is different from Ellie's that makes them become basically a stalker but still retain the consciousness of a human. Either way, there's a lot of really cool ideas that spawn from this what if scenario of the Seraphites finding out that Ellie's immune to the fungus. But definitely leave a comment and let me know what you're thinking and how you feel about this scenario. Do you think that this is something that would help the plot of The Last of Us if they focus more on Ellie's immunity, or would it harm it and make it less realistic? I personally feel like it's definitely something that is a missed opportunity, and if they were ever to do a remake or a complete reboot of The Last of Us franchise, I feel like they should change the plot to have it focus more on Ellie being immune. Make sure you leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and turn on that notification bell so you get notified the next time I upload. Also, make sure you consider joining the Discord, the link will be in the description, and please consider supporting the channel by buying some merch. The link to my website will be in the description as well. Thank you for watching. I love and appreciate you all. Sun God signing off.
I come in clutch like a genie. Don't talk unless you need me. You talk too much, you need it. All of my bitches look like models, she in love with me. When we link, it's flashing lights and cameras, got a